Hello everyone, I'm beyond excited to be filming this video because there's nothing more that I love than talking about books in the fall time. In today's video, I'm going to show you all the books that I really want to read for fall. Fall is always like the optimal time for me to get really back into reading. There's nothing more comforting than making myself a little mocha, putting on a little fall ambiance video, and then just tucking myself in with a really good book. Let's go ahead and get into it. I'm so excited. First book is Devil House by John Darnell. I think that's how you say it. I actually wanted to read this for the longest time, and my boyfriend was the one that ended up gifting me this book. And lo and behold, the moment I had this book, for some reason, I just never got around to reading it. I don't know why. It's one of those books that you just always have on your shelf, and you're like telling yourself, oh my god, I'm gonna get to it, then you just never get around to it. I don't know. I feel like I'm re-entering my true crime era. I've been rewatching or just watching a bunch of like true crime documentaries and YouTube videos. I don't know why. This is a thriller book about a true crime writer who moves into this house that is really famous for a bunch of like really crazy murders. So he starts researching this house for his book, and a bunch of things pop up, and it kind of leads him down this rabbit hole that's like full of puzzles. So already I'm very intrigued. I know that this is a really popular book, but other than that, I don't know too much about it. So if you've read this book, let me know if it was good. Next up, we have A Killer by Design, which is written by Anne Burgess. I recently picked up this book because I just finished watching the documentary Mastermind to Think Like a Killer. For those of you that are not familiar with Anne Burgess, she was the one that really brought to light the effects and trauma that victims go through, abuse victims specifically, more specifically women victims, during a time where it wasn't widely known or discussed. And because her work became so popular back then, the FBI actually reached out to her and she began working with them. And she really began popularizing the method of profiling, which is what they use to catch a bunch of really famous like serial killers. Watching that documentary and seeing everything that she had to go through, just being like a woman in a very male-dominated field, and then also just seeing how passionate she was about her job and helping victims and just trauma survivors, it was just very inspiring. And I just wanted to know more about her, the cases that she worked on, and all that. When I found out that she had also written a book, I was like, oh my god, I absolutely need to get this, because the documentary was good, don't get me wrong. I would highly recommend it to anyone that is interested in this topic because it was also filmed and edited really well. I think it also just kind of scratched the surface, and I just really wanted to know more. So that's why I got this book. But I will have to say that there's a bunch of trigger warnings for this book because she talks and goes into details about a lot of the cases that she's been involved in. I don't know how I'm gonna get through this book, but I love her, so I'm going to try my best to get through it. All right, okay, next up, I want to read My Best Friend's Exorcism. So this is going to be a reread. I bought this book like forever ago. I figured now is the perfect time for me to reread this book. And can we also take a second to look at this gorgeous, stunning cover? I love it so much. I would say that Grady Hendrix is one of my all-time favorite horror authors. I don't really dabble in the horror genre, and I feel like he makes it very accessible for me because I don't really read like Stephen King or like other more serious horror authors, I would say, but I do love what Grady Hendrix brings to this genre in particular, because although he writes in the horror genre, his books are very lighthearted and like very fun to read. The first book that I actually read from him was The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I loved this book so much, which was why I ended up getting his other book, and I'm pretty sure this is now a movie. I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know if it's good or not, but I can say that this book is good. This is about two best friends, Abby and Gretchen. One day they both decide to go swimming, but Gretchen starts to act really weird and strange after that. So Abby takes it upon herself to investigate and figure out what the fuck is happening like with her best friend. And along the way, she uncovers all these like crazy secrets, and it leads her down this very scary rabbit hole. And because I haven't read it in a while, I actually completely forgot how this book pans out, so I'm excited to reread this again. This book reminds me of Stranger Things like a lot, and I absolutely love Stranger Things. I'm actually rewatching it again, so now is the perfect time for me to mention today's sponsor, Lingopie. Lingopie is an innovative language learning platform that combines entertainment and education. It helps you with learning a new language through watching your favorite shows and movies. I love using the extension with my Netflix. I used to take Spanish back in university, and I set a new goal for the year to relearn as much as I can. I love that they have such an extensive content library with new stuff always being added alongside the double subtitles feature that has been so helpful. Being able to see the English and Spanish subtitles is such a game changer. I also love being able to click on certain sentences with the extension and going back to that specific scene because I'm such a slow learner as well. And the fact that I get to watch my favorite show alongside it is just amazing. Love that. So if you're interested, make sure to click on the link below. So next up we have Instance Around the House. I first heard of this book because I saw a TikTok about it. This girl was talking about how this was like the scariest book that she had ever read. And as someone that really wants to get more into the horror genre this year, I was like, okay, well, you've got me hooked now. Like, I need to know what this book is about. Essentially, it's about this little girl that lives with her family, and she also hears the voices of this spirit, I'm gonna say, that she calls the other mommy. I'm really curious about this book because it's told through the perspective of this young girl. She's the only one that can see this entity slash spirit, and every single day the spirit asks her, can I go inside your heart? And she responds by saying no every single day. But she also understands, even though she's so young, that this entity is not going to hold off forever, and that she's getting very restless and tired, and she's not going to take no for an answer. So that's when things start going downhill and scary things just happen around the house. I've never heard of a plot like this before, so I'm definitely very intrigued, and I really want to see how this plays out. Next, we have Rouge by Mona Awad. I've read this author's other book called Bunny, and I absolutely loved it. I read it years ago. I thought it was so interesting, and it really kept me on my toes because I had truly never read a book quite like that. So when I heard that she came out with this new book, I was like, okay, 100%, I have to read it eventually. Her other book that I read, Bunny, was a fantasy horror book. I really liked it. I love her writing style, so I feel like this book is going to be something along those lines as well. Rouge is described as a gothic horror fairy tale. I haven't read any books in that specific sort of genre, so I think that this is going to be very fun for me to read. It's about a lonely dress shop clerk who goes down this very long path of chasing beauty and youth. After her mother dies, this is when her obsession with youth and beauty kind of take on a whole nother level, because at the funeral of her mom's, this mysterious lady approaches her, and she talks about the spa that her mom frequented quite often while she was still alive. So then she starts attending that place, and this is when her obsession with youth and beauty kind of take on a whole nother level. Yeah, I would say that these topics always intrigue me in a book because I don't read about them often, but every time I do, it always has me in a chokehold because I'm like, wow, the social commentary on this stuff is crazy and always very relatable. Next up, we have Cinnamon Bun Bookstore. I have been seeing this everywhere on TikTok. I know that it's supposed to be like the ultimate cozy fall romance book. Just looking at the cover already, I'm like, okay, wow, this is adorable. I will say there's a part of me that's like, will I be let down? Because I feel like I've been reading so many contemporary romance books these days, and I would say that like 80% of them have let me down, and I'm starting to really lose hope. Anyways, this book is about a small town bookstore owner who stumbles across a secret message which leads her down this little scavenger hunt. She needs help, so she enlists this gorgeous fisherman, Noah, who also happens to have a huge crush on her. So this premise already sounds very adorable, and I want to know how this plays out. Next up, we have The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I've also had this book for a really long time, and I just never got around to reading it because I was waiting for the perfect opportunity. This is about an orphan boy that's been raised in the graveyard by a bunch of spirits and this mysterious guardian that's not alive nor dead. As he gets older, this little boy longs to kind of go out and explore and no longer be confined within the walls of this graveyard that he's like grown up in. But the scary thing about that is that once he's out there exploring, he comes face to face with the person that murdered his entire family. This is crazy. I know that this is considered a classic. A lot of people have read this and said it was really good. I feel like just reading the premise, the vibes are all there. It sounds very spooky, atmospheric. Next up, we have The Atlas Paradox. So this is the sequel to The Atlas 6. I read this a couple months ago and I loved it so much. I did not expect to love this series as much as I did, so I obviously had to go and get the second book. It's like an academia fantasy book about all of these very different, like, talented individuals that come together and join the secret society, but within the secret society there's a lot of mysteries, intrigue, backstabbing, and all this like crazy stuff. It very much reminds me of The Secret History by Donna Tartt, so it's kind of like the same vibe but also not really. One thing I will say though about the series is that you really do need like every single one of your brain cells, because reading the Atlas Six, it was at some points very convoluted, and I think that the author does use a lot of like crazy jargon that sometimes isn't really necessary, but you kind of just eat it up anyways because the plot and like the way that she writes her characters, it's so interesting and intriguing. And so I feel like this book is going to be more or less kind of like the first one. It's going to take me like 20 minutes to read one page or something, but either way I'll eat it up regardless. Very excited to read this because of course fall is the perfect time for any sort of like academia book. Next up we have Roseblood. This is a inspired retelling of Phantom of the Opera by A.G. Howard. So I actually have quite a few other books from this author. I read a lot of their books growing up. The one thing that I do love about this author, I will say, is just the style of their covers. I feel like every single time I see one of their covers, I'm blown away with how beautiful the artwork is. Like, look at this. Look at how gorgeous. And I also have this other book by them sitting right here on my desk. So let me show you guys real quick so you can understand how gorgeous it is. This book I also read by them. It's called Stain, and look at that. Isn't it stunning? This artwork style is just so gorgeous to me. So this is just a YA romance retelling of Phantom of the Opera. I tried reading this a while ago when I first bought it, and then for some reason I think I just gave up on it because I was reading so many other books during that time. And another thing that I really love about her books, the gorgeous detailings on the chapters really adds so much to a book, and I love when books do that. Very excited to read this book and actually finish it for once. Those are all of the books that I want to read this upcoming fall season. Cannot wait to get comfy while the weather gets colder outside and I don't want to leave my house, and all I want to do is just stay inside and get comfy and cozy with a book. I cannot wait. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you were able to get a recommendation from this. If you have any fall book recommendations, please let me know. Or if you have a favorite fall book that you read every fall season, every year, let me know as well. I will talk to you guys in the next one.